I joined CIE in 1979 as an apprentice, and very quickly was sequestered or seconded to the DART project. Probably 1980 I started working in the DART project.
I'm Peter Cuff. When I retired about 11 years ago, I was the Chief Safety and Security Officer. But by career, I'm a railway signal engineer.
My name is Eugene Fox, and I retired at the end of 2011, I think it was, as a Senior Specialist Engineer in the Infrastructure Department.
My name is Anne Foley. I retired in the Marketing Department of Irish Rail after doing 48 years.
I retired from Iarnród Éireann in 2010 after nearly 48 years service. I was at that time Operations Schemes Development Manager.
I joined CIE in November 1960, right, as a clerical officer, class 3. I had done the leaving cert in 1960, and as you did at that time, you kind of applied for the ESB or Iarnród Éireann or the junior execs in the civil service, and I was successful in the Iarnród Éireann exam.
When I started with CIE, it was May 29th, 1953, and I was the office boy in the civil engineer's office in Westland Row.
So I'd love to work for Iarnród Éireann again these days, because I know the excitement, and I've been talking to Jimmy Mead and a number of his team, and the excitement now with the final realisation that public transport is the answer to people moving around this country as the population grows and the density grows, particularly in Dublin at that.
Towards the end of 79, the railway was an exciting place to work because the Pope came in 79, and we went from a situation where money was kind of scarce to where money was thrown at us to get everything ready for the Pope to come. And immediately following the Pope's visit, it was announced that the electrification of the Howth-Bray line was going ahead. So they set up a department called Dublin Suburban Development in the Civil Engineer's Office under Dave Waters. And I was appointed the technical assistant to that office from the 1st of January 1980.
Initially I was in Dunleary working in the slab track between Dunleary and Sandycove, and I went out there notionally for 12 weeks for night work. It was supposed to be all done at night. I was there for a year and a half. The granite rock that we were trying to reduce turned out to be tougher than was imagined. So we spent a year and a half there installing the slab track. They did use dynamite for a while. They actually stopped. They had to stop using it after a while. There was a particular incident where a journalist was having a meal some restaurant, and a rock fell down. After one of the explosions, a rock fell on his table, and so there was a lot of controversy about it at the time.
I went from Inchicore to be trained as a diesel locomotive driver. That was the first time ever the grade that I was in Inchicore had that opportunity, and I availed of it. The day that I got notice from, if you like, CIE, that I was accepted for training, the same week I got notice from Aer Lingus that I had been selected to go to Dublin Airport as a stock controller. So I had a choice, and I stuck with the one for the railway.
Carton Finnegan was the head of the Department of AGM Marketing. He was the marketing manager for all of the entities of CIE, Dublin Bus, Bus Éireann, Irish Rail, CIE Freight, CIE Tours, and at that time it was also the CIE Hotels. So it was quite a large department. So I went to work for the marketing accountant, and after that I was asked to join the marketing team because new phenomena of transport was going to happen, because Dublin was growing and the government felt that they needed to put in a new infrastructure.
At the time of the planning of the DART, I was a systems and programming manager at the computer department in Oriel Street, and I was involved deeply in the operating control system for the DART, which was supplied by a company called WABCO, Westinghouse Air Brake Company in Pittsburgh in Pennsylvania. And this was a revolutionary system for Ireland. There was nothing like it in this part of of Europe. And when it was installed, in fact, many companies came to see it. I wasn't involved in the initial planning of the DART. I was in the computer department at that stage. But I was a commuter, and really the whole infrastructure had become very depleted and the trains were very poor. They were largely rail cars from the 1950s that had been converted to push-pull units using diesel locomotives, pushing and pulling. And inside there was just a row on each wall, left and right, of the carriage of bucket seats. And of course the trains were so old that they leaked, and the seats would have water in the bucket area where the passengers were supposed to sit. So the solution there was to drill a hole in the seat and let the water through.
It was an interesting time because DART really was the catalyst. As I said, there were those kind of just the two projects, 1930s and mid-70s. But it was the first time CIE took on a big project in its own right themselves. So quite a few engineers were recruited straight as graduates out of college, which very quickly formed a team with myself. So we were a young, enthusiastic team of young engineers.
I asked Mr. Peter Cuff, engineer in charge of the signal installations, if the new system would mean long delays for motorists.
No, our studies have indicated that with the full 5-minute service of electric trains, the delays on the crossing to road traffic will be far less severe than they are with the present diesel service. It
was the first time really North American equipment had been used in this part of the world. I mean, we had tended to follow British, mainly because the railways here were built during the time when it was part of the United Kingdom, and therefore all the legislation is the same as the UK, so you can address the legislative requirements best by using the same technology, the same designs, the same principles. So it was quite a challenge to have an American supplier, which is a completely different philosophy. And one of my colleagues, who unfortunately passed away only a couple of months ago, Barry Durkin, did a lot of very innovative work on matching North American technology to Irish requirements. And he managed to invent, if you like, a new type of shunt signal that we use here, which needed much less equipment to display different routes, because you can display white lights left to right, straight on, which you couldn't do with the British system. We also adopted North American, what's called cab signalling, which is a way of bringing speed commands and signalling commands into the driver's cab. It's a system called automatic train protection. It's a way of stopping trains colliding with each other. And that, he pretty much single-handedly engineered how to make it work on our railway.
There was a big public relations effort at that time and there was a lot of meetings all over the Dublin suburbs explaining to the people what the benefits that would be when it came through, and just to put up with the disruption while it was there, which they did. But again, that disruption involved creating new timetables and creating new rosters and claims for disturbance allowance and claims for noise and all that. So we were up and down to the Rights Commissioner and the Labour Court and that. But eventually we got through the whole lot. The drivers of the old trains were actually trained to drive the electric trains. And the signalmen in the old signal cabins in Hort and Sutton and Hort Junction and that, those old signalmen, there was a voluntary service programme for those who did want to go through. And there was a big debate within the company at the time, and many people wouldn't know it. And I say this now gently, but whether these guys would be up to it, to this new computerized suburban system. And I know Jack Fennelly, who was my boss at the time, he had great faith in the workforce, which I also had, and their ability to adapt. And they did. So when the DART came in, they were driven by the old drivers from Connolly 1 and Connolly 2. There was 2 depots within Connolly.
Depot in Bray, though.
Oh, there was a depot in Bray, yes, there was, and they were part of that training. And I'd say all the drivers when the DART started were all or the older type drivers, and the same with the signalmen. And they adapted to it.
The DART was a blend of everything. When you think about it, it was amazing it all came together and worked. The trains were German. Traction equipment on the trains was GEC, so that was British. The overhead line equipment was Siemens, so that was German. The power stations, the substations and switch houses, they were all French. The signalling was American. And all the civil works was basically Irish, and all the track works was Irish. And all this thing had to come together. And the Americans, they don't know what a millimetre is because they don't have them. They talk feet or decimals of feet. It did all come together. It was credit to everyone involved.
The DART was finished in 1984, and it was actually a pleasure to be part of the team. It was quite a small team. We probably about 15 of us in total. I'm involved in projects these days, and 15 probably would only be the size of the entire safety team. So we ran the entire project with 15 people. It was a different time. Regulation wasn't there. We didn't have a commission for a rail regulation. We had very little oversight of us generally. But we were successful. We didn't injure anybody, and we delivered the project pretty much on time. I think 106 million comes to mind. Punt was the cost of the project, which these days probably you wouldn't get a design study done for that. But that's, again, different times. Obviously you have to inflate that too. Though someone recently did a piece of work and reckoned if you inflated the cost of the DART up in 1984 to today's prices, it will be about $500 million, which still sounds like good money for what we did. And there was a lot of, I remember at the time, public angst at the time saying this is an awful lot of money to be spending on a rail system. But I think from day one it was successful, and it's now obviously part of Dublin, just seen as being one of the iconic shots of Dublin, people going on DARTs.
There was a big build-up to the opening of the DART. There had been a lot of engineering work, a lot of disruption, obviously, and people were really looking forward to the new electric train system. And yes, it was a big day when the DART started, and a new era for Dublin. There were some critics saying that it was too expensive, it cost too much money. But in hindsight, that was well spent money.
So we did everything ourselves, everything nearly. I mean, the catering was brought in from CIE. It was launched down in Connolly off Amiens Street, because that was the station they came in on. I was in the office operating, get this, get that, and get the other, you know. And of course, we'd other launches, but the actual launch date was all the hierarchy. You know, the Taoiseach, the managing directors, the AGMs, and then local communities. But to organise all that, you know, you weren't sitting there being a participant at the launch.
Our union at that time was having its annual conference, and I was a delegate to the annual conference, so I missed out by about 3 or 4 days. And then came the team, and I had been fully trained and passed for it.
Oh yes, there were glitches. There was a power failure between Dunleary and Bray, and the train got stranded. Jack Ahern, the locomotive inspector from Fairview, he was on the train, and he kept the passengers informed of what was happening, but people reported it all to the newspaper. One of the outcomes was in the evening press of the following evening, there was a picture or a drawing of a large battery with 2 characters looking up at it saying, that's the new battery for the electric trains.
From day one, the DART was non-smoking. And in fact, among the driving fraternity, there was a feeling, this won't work. But in fact, what was remarkable was fellow passengers became the disciplinarians of those who might want to smoke, and will be quickly reminded, sorry, there's no smoking on the DART.
But the DART particularly is probably more close to me because of my history with it. So the intention is to treble the size of the DART network, initially with DART Plus West going to Maynooth, then probably DART Plus South West going to Hazelhatch and beyond. And then we're looking at DART Plus Coastal going to Drogheda, and then DART Plus Coastal South going to Greystones, but possibly Wicklow as well. And there may be some battery technology using that in the short term, both Drogheda and possibly Wicklow. But it's an exciting time to be in railways generally, and the DART particularly is one that is iconic in Dublin. It's great to be involved in it.
So it comes back to having the public transport, having the frequency and the reliability and the comfort. And there's no reason why people shouldn't use it. And it is the answer.
I'm happy with my life, I'm happy with my career because, you know, I think there must be some people working in semi-state organisations who never win anything other than a pay packet.
On top of the DART trains, there's if you like, a V-shaped pantograph that collects the power from the overhead line and feeds it into the train. And for short, it's in railway terms, it's normally referred to as a pan. And the electrical control operator asked the driver to drop his pans. And it was misconstrued by passengers adjacent to the cab who could hear the conversation, and they interpreted it as, "Driver, drop your pants."